Once Human is a blend of multiple video game genres, it is simultaneously a multiplayer open-world survival game where you select a server, build a base, and interact with other players, similar to Rust or Ark, but you also have a loot and shoot element like Destiny or The Division, where you farm weapons and gear from dungeons and raids to create unique loadouts and do optimal DPS. There is also a core component that encourages players on PvE servers to work together, buying and trading materials or equipment with each other and trying to defeat the 40-player world boss activities known as Prime Wars. It is currently free to play on PC, coming to mobile and planned for console 2025. There's a lot going on in this game, and there's been a tremendous amount of misinformation about the game as well, specifically how you are losing everything when the season wipes after 6 weeks. So here is my review after 120 hours in the game. There is plenty to be excited about, but also plenty of things that needs work. But before starting, this video is sponsored by Raycon. This goblin is not old enough for school yet, but doesn't mean you can't enjoy the back to school specials. Raycon helps with my mental health every day because we are well and truly into the terrible twos, and with Raycon's active noise cancellation, it is perfect for blocking out a toddler tantrum. And when you need to be aware of your surroundings, you can put on awareness mode with the new and improved tap function features. And regardless of how busy life gets, your Raycons will always be charged because the new quick charge feature can charge them in 10 minutes, giving you 90 minutes of battery, and on full charge you get 32 hours of battery life. Without doubt, the favorite part of my day is crawling into bed, popping in the Raycons and putting on some anime, and because of the ergonomic design, they are super comfy even while lying down. If you're still not convinced, Raycon offers a 30-day happiness guarantee for easy returns, so click the link in the description box below or go to buyraycon.com/Myelin to get 20 to 40% off your Raycon purchase. Just a quick note, there will likely be a bunch of references to Destiny 2 in this video. If you are watching this on my variety channel, more Myelin Games, and you don't know, I have a Destiny channel and I've been making Destiny content for 10 years, hence why I make a lot of comparisons to Destiny. Right, let's start with the most controversial topic, the seasonal resets. This is a perfect starting topic because to understand seasonal resets, you need to understand the basic game loop. Seasons are divided into weekly phases, with the season resetting after week 6. The weekly phases do things like open up new areas of the map, introduce new activities and bosses, unlock harder versions of the activities which rewards better loot, introduce discounted weapons and armor, allowing players to obtain new gear for different builds, and it progresses the story. Before we actually talk about what you keep or lose with a seasonal reset, you need to understand the loot grind in general. When you are talking about weapons or armor, they drop from activities in 2 different ways. Sometimes you'll get the weapon or armor piece itself drop straight away and you'll be able to equip it right away, and other times you'll get a blueprint fragment for the weapon or the armor piece. Gear that has dropped from an activity cannot be repaired, so even though you can equip it and use it straight away, eventually its durability will fade and you won't be able to use it anymore. And so gear that drops from activities is more like a try before you buy kind of deal, where you can test out gear and see if it works with your build before you invest in unlocking the blueprint. Blueprint fragments are like red borders from Destiny 2. You need to collect enough blueprint fragments of a specific weapon or armor piece to unlock it. Once you've unlocked it, you can craft it and you can repair that crafted item as many times as you need. So this is like your permanent gear. Blueprints are not RNG based. The game tells you exactly where to go get them, which often involves exploring the world, clearing bosses, very typical base clearing things that you would expect to see in an open world game. That being said, some of the best gear comes from the wish machine, which allows you to purchase blueprints with in-game currency, or you can play a little mini game at the wish machine for a chance to win some gear. By the way, this currency is all earned in-game. You can't buy this with real money, you have to earn it. Some of the armor is like Destiny exotics with unique perks, and then other armor has set bonuses. With the more armor you wear from a specific set, the more perks you unlock. The wish machine and this specific currency is tied to the weekly phases and seasons. The currency is called Starcrom, and you can't farm it. There is only a certain amount that you can earn every week, every phase. There are different activities that you can do, but to oversimplify it, It's like Destiny. There are some things you can only do once per week by doing activities, and then you have to wait for the weekly reset to earn more. What this means is you can't just play the game 24/7 and purchase all the legendary gear from the wish machine. You have to theory craft or watch a YouTube video or have it drop as a looted item and decide what you actually want, then purchase the blueprint and invest it into your builds. Also, you can level up blueprints with spare blueprint fragments. If you get spare fragments and you already have unlocked a piece of gear, you can level up the blueprint and it will craft a better version of it. This is denoted by the stars next to the name. So to summarize, a big part of the loot grind in this game is collecting the blueprints so you can craft the gear, because crafted gear can be repaired. I promise you this is all important for discussing seasonal resets. The other big component of the loot grind is mods. You have a select pool of mods that can be equipped to each gear slot. So there are specific mods that can be equipped on your weapon. There are specific mods that can be put on your helmet, on your mask, etc. These mods have different tiers of rarity, and you have to play the hardest level activities to get the best mods to drop. However, it is very deterministic. For each mod slot, there is a specific activity to grind. For example, if you need a mask mod, you grind this dungeon. Whatever mod you are missing, you can find where it drops from and just grind that activity until you get it to drop for you. Now, the real grind are the secondary attributes on the mod. These are semi-randomized. For example, these are the same mod, they have a different main attribute in green and randomized secondary attributes. I have a crit damage build, so I actually want this one that has crit damage on it, but I also want optimized secondary attributes. So you're not just looking for the right kind of mod, but the right kind of mod with the right attributes. Okay, so you're probably thinking, oh my god, they delete all that work every 6 weeks. I mean, this is worse than sunsetting in Destiny. Well, they don't delete everything, and this is where a lot of misinformation has come about. You don't lose your blueprints or your mods, which is like 99% of the grind. You may, and I say may lose the actual weapon itself that you are using, but you can recraft it using the blueprints in the next season, and then just re-equip the mods you had previously farmed. By the way, mods are unlimited use. You can apply, remove, and reapply without cost as many times as you want. With that being said, the reason I said that you may lose the weapon is that you'll be able to take some weapons with you to a new season. And considering I really only have one build this season, I likely won't have to recraft it. I probably will be able to take it with me. Transferring gear over to a new season involves something called Eternal Land, and to be honest, and this is a big criticism, this process is not very clear, and even after 100 hours, it's not very clear, and likely is a big contributor to confusion. Eternal Lands acts as a middle ground between seasons, so you can transfer things into Eternal Land and then use a currency to port them back into a new season. However, the currency will be limited, so you won't be able to transfer everything and then bring everything back over to a new season. And we don't know the cost of transferring gear to a new season. For example, will a single weapon cost me all of my currency? We don't know. The worst case scenario is that you will need to recraft your gear, your weapons, and your armor. So you need to get the materials again to recraft it. But this game, to be honest, is actually pretty light on the grind for materials. Often I just play the game and I have all the materials that I actually need. Okay, so what do you lose then? And what is the purpose of wiping every season? One aspect of wiping every season is about consolidating servers. Right now, the server that I'm on is full. And so friends who have decided that they want to play the game right now with me can't actually play the game with me. This is actually a huge negative of the game and probably the biggest pain point. So when the season ends, my understanding is that you will have the opportunity to choose a new server, and at that point you can coordinate with your friends to be in the same server. But once again, this is not very well communicated and was actually mentioned only in a survey. Another main reason to wipe the server each season is to remove everyone's bases from the map. There are areas that are really prime real estate in Once Human because you can set up factories essentially to farm endgame materials like acid or fuel. Having a fuel farm or an acid farm area is not essential, but people can specialize in farming a certain material and then participate in the in-game economy to sell it to other players. So wiping the map gives everyone an opportunity to rebuild in a more resource-dense area. While you will lose your base, you can actually make your base a blueprint, so you will not need to redesign it again. It will be saved as a blueprint and then you can just rebuild it the same as last season, or you can start over if you want to. You will lose most of your materials, so all of the ore that you refine, bullets you made, all your standard materials, but you won't lose your main currencies, basically currencies that you earn from activities rather than like chopping down a tree or mining an ore. And you get these just from completing activities and can often trade them with vendors for items. The best way to think about the server wipe is like this. The aspects of the game that are more survival crafting, i.e. building your base, chopping down trees, mining ore, crafting bullets, you will lose. And the parts of the game that are more looter shooter, collecting blueprints, grinding mods, you'll keep. There are also PvP servers, and even on PvE servers, there are some PvP minigames that give important currencies. So resetting everyone also helps people who started the game late to compete in PvP. I think you can kind of see where the issue arises. Multiplayer survival crafting games like Rust or Ark, it's common practice to have server wipes and commonly accepted as part of the game. But oppositely, loot and shooter games don't do this. They don't get you to grind the loot, then take it away. And if this does happen, like sunsetting in Destiny, which removed players' loot, it's heavily despised. With that being said, I do think they have tried hard to balance seasonal resets by keeping big aspects of the grind, blueprints and mods, but also leveling the playing field for new players joining the game. Overall, it's a complex system to get your head around, and the real details are hidden in menus, and I truly don't really understand how Eternal Land works. I probably just need to wait for a seasonal wipe to truly understand it. Once the season does actually wipe, if people still want to hear my thoughts about this game, I'm happy to revisit this conversation. Okay, that's enough talking about seasonal resets. Let's move on to some other positive aspects of the game. The general theme and the aesthetic of the game, I really enjoyed. It is very weird and very cosmic horror at times, kind of reminds me of Remnant mixed with Control, and this theme really allows interesting bosses and boss mechanics. It's actually the reason I never really got into The Division. I like The Division, but I also felt that the enemies were just not very interesting, and shooting 1,000 rounds into a chunky human was never really interesting to me. So this really fills that gap and really opens the door for interesting encounters. The theme is also so flexible, it kind of lets the developers do whatever they want. For example, there's also this Power World Pokemon aspect to the game. These little creatures are called deviations, and you find them out in the wild or from completing activities, and they have a bunch of different abilities. Some of them stay at your base and automatically farm materials for you. Others are combat deviations and give you buffs during fights. Others make materials that let you craft unique items like this, allowing you to jump higher, which is great for exploration. It's a nice little extra layer to both crafting and combat, and in general, I get excited to collect more deviations. And you have to house them at your base and do things to make them happy, like provide music or lights, which makes them more effective. Okay, let's just talk about the main types of activities: story, open world, loot and shoot, and community activities. There is a story to the game, and it basically encourages you to explore the map, introduces you to basic game concepts, and progresses through the main bosses. I'll be honest, I didn't quite pay attention to the lore. I think I'm a bit burnt out from Destiny in that regards. When it comes to exploration, it is very much an open world experience. There are bases that you can clear that have weapon, armor, and mystical crates to collect, as well as other certain materials. Higher level areas drop higher level materials needed to craft better gear. There are also teleportation towers to unlock and mini puzzles and secrets scattered throughout the world. There is quite a lot to collect, and for completionists, you can use a map guide to go around collecting everything. In addition to filling out your blueprints, you can find cooking recipes, formulas for decorations in your base, which actually is like an in-game economy in itself, deviations, those little creatures I previously mentioned, and general loot drops for weapons and armor and mods. On the loot and shoot activity side of things, you have three main activities: silos, raids, and monoliths. Silos are the Destiny equivalent of a strike mission, where you enter a silo from the main world area, you enter a separate instance, mostly linear stage with often two bosses, one secret boss and one main boss. You grind these out to find the right armor mods. You can easily do these solo but also team up, especially for harder difficulties, to try speedrun them. The raids are much closer to what you would expect from a Destiny raid or dungeon. The mechanics are much more complex, and the only one currently available is on the highest level of difficulty. It is possible to complete solo, but you will really need to have a perfected build. For most people, you'll need a team. To give you an example of the mechanics, this is what the final encounter looked like. You have to shoot the flying enemies to drop an orb, then use that orb to break a spore pile. The spore pile will spawn an enemy with the same colored shield. You then need to destroy that enemy while standing on a plate corresponding to the shield color. Repeat that 4 times to activate DPS. The boss then gains more aggressive movesets during the final phase of damage. It is really cool. Of course, it's nowhere near the complexity of a Destiny raid or a Destiny dungeon, but I think it's a great foundation. I hope they continue to improve on it. It is easily part of the game that I'm most interested in, so I hope it does continue to improve. Just the idea that the devs are thinking this way when designing encounters is super encouraging. Monolith bosses are part of the story, but also farmable once unlocked. You can farm these bosses for your weapon mods. Each boss has a unique moveset that you can learn how to avoid, when to start doing damage. And I actually get very big Remnant vibes from Monoliths. It reminds me of a lot of Remnant 1 and Remnant 2. Once again, I find it really encouraging that it's not just stand in a single spot and do DPS, but rather there are some mechanics to bosses. There's definitely room for improvement here, but once again, I think it's a great foundation. Finally, there are also community-based activities. One of the big things here are Prime Wars. These are 40-player activities that anyone can start at any time. And it essentially spawns a boss that tries to attack a receiver. Players prepare by building defenses, and you have to defeat the boss before it reaches the objective. There is a little bit of grind to prepare for these wars because the boss has this overshield, rendering your normal weapons almost useless, so you have to craft turrets with missiles and other heavy weapons to inflict damage. For me, this was my first big motivation for crafting. I just really wanted to take down one of these bosses. You also get rewards based upon how much you contribute. So if you bring materials to make a turret and you bring biomissiles and you inflict heavy damage, you get better rewards than someone who just shows up. Overall, I love the idea of the Prime War, but there are plenty of issues with it, which I'll talk about during the criticism section. There are other community activities which are basically public events. These randomly occur on the server and can change from a fishing event where you literally just fish and have a better rate for catching fish to mini PvP events. The PvP event enables PvP even on PvE servers, and it's a game of hot potato. You essentially try to hold a jellyfish for as long as possible. Kills reset your timer, killing other players gain you the jellyfish. It's not serious at all, and just participating will still net you some currency for the PvP vendor who actually sells important mods. You can also activate refineries around the map, which is a wave defense mode and encourages community participation. You need a currency to start them, which you get from exploring and looting, but everyone who helps out defending the point gets the rewards, which include endgame materials like fuel and acid. The other way the game encourages people on a server to work together is specializations. Specializations unlock when you level up and give you powerful bonuses. However, you only get a random selection from each level, and there's no guarantee that you'll get certain ones. For example, I got one that allowed me to craft 3 biomissiles for the price of 1. This was huge. It was a grind to get the materials to create these missiles to compete in the Prime Wars, but I could craft 3 for the price of 1, so I kind of became the biomissile crafter. Sometimes specializations let you craft items that do very powerful things, like let you carry more materials in your backpack, or let you craft more efficient furnaces, or a solar drill which recharges with the sun and you never have to craft a pickaxe again, and so on. And so what happens is people on the server trade and offer their specializations to others. By the way, you can make small teams of people called hives, but hives can join together to form a warband, a bit like a clan in Destiny. So if you don't like talking to random people, you can just trade amongst your friends and coordinate your specializations. Overall, you have 4 distinct types of activities: the campaign, open world exploration, you have loot and shoot grind activities like the solos, the raids, the monolith bases, and then you have these community activities, the Prime Wars, the public events. And often you'll find yourself bouncing between all of these activities. You might be farming a mod in a silo, then see a Prime War start up, so go help out, and then see a public event start, so go do that. And at times you have to be pretty focused, as it's quite easy to be distracted by all the activities taking place on a server. Before we get to criticisms, let's talk about weapon build crafting. And I'm just going to use an example here of things to consider when making a build, because I think that will highlight how you can create builds within this game. So this is a shrapnel build, and you can make it so you can never have to reload. Shrapnel basically causes damage to other body parts every 4th hit. This helmet creates more shrapnel shards. This mod makes it so my gun reloads if a shrapnel shard hits a weak spot, and this mod makes it more likely for shrapnel to hit a weak spot. Then this mod synergizes with not having to reload, as it stacks critical chance the longer you have been shooting. Then I have some gear set bonuses that increase crit chances, which in turn creates more shrapnel. Okay, then you synergize your build with the right deviation, the right cooking buffs, food and drink, like this meal that increases shrapnel damage, crafting better bullets, and then additional perks that you unlock through your cradle. You can even incorporate your secondary weapon into builds and apply debuffs to enemies. Like for example, this sniper can mark targets, then I can have a mod that does more crit chance against marked targets. I don't expect you to understand any of that if you haven't played the game, but it's just to highlight how many things you can stack upon each other and how the build crafting is quite complex, and I've really enjoyed it. Oh, and one last thing before I get to the criticisms, I should also chat about monetization, because this is a free-to-play game. All the monetization is cosmetic, both cosmetics for your character and for your base. This like window wall is actually a paid skin for your base. There is no pay to go fast, pay to progress, pay to unlock weapon blueprints. It all sits well within cosmetics. Overall, I think this game is a great blend of multiplayer survival crafting and loot and shoot, and I think it has those end game goals like raids and community events that keep me motivated to keep bettering my builds. But a lot of the things that I do like about this game, to be honest, some of it still feels under development. The foundation and core mechanics are heading in the right direction for a game that I could play for years, but I do have some big criticisms. The first is to do with playing with friends. This game is very similar to Destiny in that you want to hang out with your friends to grind harder activities. But because this game is also a survival crafting game with servers, you can only play with friends who are on the exact same server. So in my case, some of my friends picked up the game later, my server is now full, and they cannot join me, and I cannot play the game with them. I cannot transfer characters to another server. I'm hoping that the server wipe will actually allow us to all consolidate and play together, as I think we'll get to choose a new server once it wipes, but right now, it completely sucks. I had to find random people to help finish the raid. I don't have any in real life gaming friends to grind activities with, but thankfully because I am streaming it, a bunch of people from my chat joined the same server, and that's been a ton of fun. But if I wasn't streaming, I would be playing pretty solo. Now, there is a silver lining to all of this, and a lot of people have said they have made friends on servers because of the community activities and encouragements. Of course, different servers have different vibes, and I was on a PvE server, so really friendly, but this just shows you the interaction between players on servers. The other downside of dedicated servers is that I had to choose a US server because I was playing with a US friend, so my ping is awful. And I never thought I'd be thankful for Destiny's non-dedicated servers, but man, as an Australian, I play Destiny raids and dungeons with anyone around the world all the time, and I hardly notice any delay. Playing this game on a US server is very, very, very noticeable, and this is just something to be aware of if you live in a more isolated country like I do. The next criticism is related to the enemy AI. In the early game, the enemy AI kind of just stand there. They're not really threatening at all. Now, some of this is intentional because the servers also have like a general difficulty level, so I do wonder if they will increase this, but I think the open world environment could definitely be more threatening. This was provided as feedback pretty early on to the devs, and some changes have already been made, and definitely notice AI being more responsive in the open world, but still overall, I think you'll find a big portion of the early game non-challenging. The bosses have really cool movesets and the foundation for some epic fights that involve actual mechanics, but they also lack polish. It's hard to describe it, but if you're familiar with Remnant or Remnant 2, that game has amazing combat, amazing fluid, responsive combat. And I wish that was the same for Once Human. I wish it felt as polished, as smooth, as responsive as that. Once again, it has the foundations there, it just needs a little bit more time in the oven. The next criticism, and easily the top complaint from many users, is the menu UI hell and currency overload. This is well and truly structured like a bad mobile game, and if you've played any mobile games before, you'll know what I mean. There are menus hidden in menus, not to mention like 3 different shops. I've made multiple YouTube shorts on just how to find stuff in the menus before. While it's annoying, like anything, you do learn where everything is eventually, but it will definitely put some players off. On the topic of UI, there are some pretty substantial translation issues and some pretty big ones too, like this weapon saying a 4% chance for shrapnel, but it actually means every 4th hit. Like that's a very big difference. There are also some pretty consistent bugs like waypoints just not working, voice lines cutting out, and sometimes just menu descriptions going away. The next huge disappointment is the Prime War, where you have 40 people on the server band together to take out a boss. Really cool concept, but it is buggy and laggy as hell. And it's not just me on the US server, it's actually everyone, because I had other people in voice comms when I was doing this. And with this one boss, it lagged so bad, nobody could swap weapons or guns. And it wasn't just me. And then the boss glitched into the air and we had to build a tower to get high enough to kill it, which ended up being pretty funny. Regardless, in the end, Once Human still gives in beta vibes when huge aspects of the game like the Prime Wars just don't work properly. The other issue with the Prime War is people often complete it on reset and you don't complete it on reset and you're pretty much stuffed. I was busy at that time and I did start a Prime War with people from my community with only 3 of us on like a hard mode. We had enough people to drop the boss, but we didn't have enough people to do enough damage. So it does really take a lot of participation from your server. If this game was still in beta, and it did have a beta, I think many people would be looking forward to full release with all the bugs ironed out and everything just feeling more optimized, smoother, and more responsive, from your character to the enemy AI. That being said, many games stay in beta for years, for way too long, and so the benefit of releasing the game in its current state is that the devs have been pretty responsive to feedback and acting relatively quickly. As a proof of concept, this game is absolutely amazing. It combines the best elements of different genres. I'm 100% playing more of it, but I really do hope some of these complaints can be ironed out. There you have it, my 120-hour review of Once Human. If you'd like to support the channel and cannot leave a comment, you can leave the words Once Human. As usual, it's been a pleasure. This is Myelin Games. Peace.